Right, easy guys. Just thought I'd show you how I do my bass in my EMU E6400. Got a stock sound right here which I'll play for you. Just turn it up a bit. It's a pretty basic right there. Then what I normally do is I'll create a copy, which I've already done. Then what I do is I'll add some gain. With a bass sound like this, I don't go too extreme. I'll go like maybe 8 to 12 dB. If I'm doing like an 808, which I normally go quite excessive, I'll probably boost that like 24 dB, just so you get a really nice growl to it. And you can also, when you've got that, you can filter it all out with a low pass, so you still have that real deep sub. But anyway, yeah, so with this sort of sound right here, I'll do that. I'll also use the exciter, about 30%. And then once I've gone in here, edited preset, I'll come back into here depending on how it sounds, and then probably add another, say, 15 to 20%, just because the exciter gives you nice kind of like, it's like almost fuzz on top of the actual sound, so it's like added top end, if you know what I mean. So yeah, it gives it a bit of rip on top of a gain. So yeah, really nice combination. Try those two out if you have one of these, that is. Anyways, yeah, so once I've done that, I'll go into here, make sure I select my copy layer, which I've gained, come into here. Now my main output right here is running over here into my Focusrite Green EQ, which handles pretty much like just all the general EQing, so I can get like more sub, more tops, all that sort of stuff. So then that goes over there into the desk, and then back into Ableton. So everything that I do here is being sort of finalized by the Green EQ. So yeah, it's like my two main pieces of kit. But if you've just got an EMU, you can get some great results. You don't need any of this stuff. It's just extra bit of kit that I've got the last couple of weeks, months. Alright, so yeah, that's my main output. Then what I'll do is I'll select the first low pass, and I'll roll that down till I get a nice kind of balance between sub and like mids. Like you can just hear that sort of mids. And then I'll go into my filter envelope, play around with this, and yeah, I'll just change it up every single time. Like it's never the same, you know what I mean? Sometimes it might just start here, drop, go straight up, or it might kind of like come down kind of slow and just rise the whole way to the end, so you get that kind of like sub to high. You probably have to play around with it to really know what I'm talking about, but yeah, that's just a brief description. So yeah, I'll play around with this. Also add a little bit of LFO, very small amount with a bit of delay. Don't play around with the variation too much, to be honest with you, but it can do some cool things. Like if you add it to like 30%, with this random one, which is just all sorts of waveforms pretty much. But I like sine because it's nice and smooth. Yeah, so that normally does a job for me. And then I'll go into my chords, and basically this is like the most crucial part of like everything that I've done here. So I'll go into here, and yeah, filter envelope, filter frequency, plus or minus 100%, depending on how you want it to start. Like right here, I think it starts kind of like more mid-rangey, goes sort of sub, rises up. You get the idea. So if I was to swap that around, it's going to start kind of sub and then move down to more sort of mid-rangey sounds, if you get me. And then mod wheel, I'll play around with that whilst all the Z planes are doing their thing right here. So it's kind of like double manipulation, I guess. Play around with that on the filter frequency, LFO on the filter frequency as well. And yeah, that can kind of add something else to it. So like right here, if I have this LFO starting late on this, the LFO won't sort of start until about here, and then you'll get a like nice wobbly sound. So all this is going on, and then that comes in, you can get some really nice results. So try that out if you haven't done it before. I'm sure there's a lot of other people out there that are like, they've got their sort of ways of doing all this down pat. They don't really need to try these things out, but yeah, this is just how I do my bass. A lot of people ask me like, how do you do that with your EMU? And yeah, man, it's just pretty much a case of me sitting here playing around with this thing until I get some nice sounds. And yeah, so alright, so once I've done that sub layer which I was telling you about, I then go back into here and I'll either play around with either of these two high passes or the band passes. This band pass I love because it's got a nice kind of growly mid-range sort of sound to it, so I'll use that. That I'll then send to my sub output, right? That runs over here into my Roland SRV, really nice reverb, back into the desk, and then back into Ableton. And what I do with this is I'll get a more mid-rangey sort of sound. So I'll take out, you can see up here, I've taken out all the sub right there. Yeah, and I'll just get a tops layer pretty much, and I'll play that for you. Just give me a sec. We'll see if this plays. Yeah, so you can kind of hear that there. It's more like a rippy, distorting a bit there. But yeah, that's pretty much what I do with my tops. And then, you know, I'll play around with a dry and wet here, which you don't need. You can use all your Ableton reverbs or Logic, whatever you use. Then what I do is I'll come back down here, right? New. And what I'll do is come over here and I'll resample it at 20-bit. So then it's going to be going from either of my two units, depending on what I'm doing, like subs or mids. I do a lot of my mid-range edits through the green EQ, back into the EMU, then they get done up here again, because like this is a mono device, so I'll make it a little bit more stereo up in Ableton. Then it'll come back out here and I'll add a little bit of like sort of width to it, and I'll get a nice stereo sound sort of right at the end. And yeah, I'll resample that back here, and then it'll give me, if I head back into here, I'll have another layer here, so it'll be like SO4 untitled. And then when I come back up here, I've got that sound here, like, but it's going to have all this done to it all over again. And then, so what I can do is play around with all this, do some different shapes, maybe amp up the LFO a little bit, maybe play around with this a little bit, and then I can resample it again. It really depends. Like, if it sounds good the way it is, there's no point like destroying it. I might as well just leave it, maybe tighten it up in Ableton, maybe just bring out certain frequencies. But a lot of the time my best edits are when I've done this, then resample, then played around with this, and then resampled again and again. And it's definitely like a tedious kind of thing. Like, my good friend that also has an E64, he often says to me like, you know, how do you have patience to do this stuff? And the bottom line is like, I love this unit, I absolutely love it, love playing around with it, will never get rid of this unit, it just love everything about it, you know what I mean? Like, I can't say that enough. And before I got this, you know, probably like three to 4 years ago pretty much, it was all just mouse, you know, Camel Crusher, all those sort of things, and like doing everything with the mouse on Ableton. And it's cool, you can get some nice sounds, you can get it nice and accurate, and you can actually see what you're doing. But there's something different about using an EMU or using any digital sampler in the analog domain, because it's all done by ear. You know, you're listening to it and you're like, right, well that's a little bit too quick, so I'll drag it out a little bit more, and I like how that's kind of like a little bit later. So yeah, you are looking at it, but essentially you're using your ears, which is something that a lot of people don't really do when they write music, you know what I mean? Everything's done with like, oh, it doesn't look right on this VST. So yeah, man, that's the main reason why I love this thing. Like, you get some really nice sounds just by using your ears and using a bit of creativity. So if you've got the patience and you're thinking about getting one of these, whether it be the 5000, the 64 or the E4 XT, it doesn't really matter. Like, they all essentially do the same things. Yeah, you can get them quite cheap these days, and they do a great job, man. Like, they do bass, drums. I use them for pads. Like, I'll do all this on my pads, and I'll play around with the LFO just so I get a nice little bit of movement. And yeah, you can just get some really nice, like, thick, like, stereo movement to your sounds, and everything just has a real warm sort of feel to it. And yeah, so that's pretty much how I go about doing my bass in this. I might wind up doing a video for you guys showing how I play around with drums, maybe some pads, if you guys are feeling this video. And yeah, so hope you enjoyed it, hope you picked a few things up, and yeah, easy.